sports. Leading by example is the expectation. That's your job, to be on time, to do what you're supposed to do, to work hard, to study. That's part of that's in your contract,
The NFL has approved to allow their players to participate in the 2028 Olympics for flag football. And make sure to tune in this evening as the Nashville Sounds are back in action, taking on Scranton Wilkes-Barre as coverage begins at 6:20 on 94.9 The Fan.
For more, log on to theGameNashville.com. Your sports live here on the Game Nashville Sports Network.
D-Mace, Fingen, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, David James here with you. Willie, nice of you to join us right before the show starts.
Yeah, yay.
I'm a man on the move.
Hey, man, he's talking to the suit, man. When you got to talk to the suit.
I was talking to the suit.
Yeah, when you talk to the suit, man, all that other stuff is just, whatever. All that, this show.
When the suit has things to say, you stop when you
Exactly. It's like E.F. Hutton. When the suit talks, people listen. Do you remember that commercial?
No.
Oh my goodness.
This is another sign.
Exactly.
And I are old.
E.F. Hutton. When people talk, when we talk,
people listen.
There we go. Look it up, man. Look it up.
YouTube it.
Yeah, YouTube it.
I feel like my hit rate on references that the two of you make that I understand is pretty high.
It's pretty good for your age.
It's pretty good.
It's very good for your age.
You act like I'm that much younger than the two of you. I guess I am.
Yeah, you are. You at your early 30s?
I wish I was in my early 30s.
Mid 30s?
Hold on, let me do the math here. I'm 36.
That's mid.
Yeah, mid 30s, yeah.
You
can be my little brother.
Mid to late 30s.
Because my little brother is a little bit younger than you. So you can be my little. Actually, it's his birthday today. So happy birthday.
Happy
little
birthday, little brother.
Yeah. So he's in town because he had his daughters and his wife came up and younger daughter the other day because his older daughter was graduating. So they came up, spent some time with me the other day, and he has a birthday little thing today, which I'm going to go to. And, so happy birthday to my little bro. So
happy birthday.
Yeah. Albert, but we call him Al.
We do have an important update, an important station update. Joe Rexrode's tick bite, not tick bike. That'd be pretty funny.
Yeah, it would be.
His tick bite is okay.
Okay. Yes, Joe. Yes.
Rex Road.
He rose from the ashes.
I came in early. Today, and I ran into Robbie, and I said, "Is Joe okay?" And he said, "Yeah, tick bite's fine." Shocker that Rexrode reacted about something.
I wonder if it's okay, and because my daughter does this, and when I was married, it was like, Marcy did it, and maybe your spouses do it too. It's not necessarily an overreaction. It's just go get it taken care of. We don't want no other problems, and you're like, well, I really don't want to because I don't, and you end up going right. I wonder if Rexrode was a little pressured into going, like, you need to go. Remember that last episode we had, Rexrode? You need to go. So I wonder if that was the case, or he just went because he's just paranoid.
Well, what, Adam? How would you answer that question? Do you think he went because he was paranoid, or do you think he
got a little nudge?
He was nudged by somebody.
Paranoia.
No, Willie, what do you think?
Well, I don't know.
No, he doesn't know either.
Let's there is
Okay,
a reputation.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a reputation
Yes.
that I've been told about that he would be the type that would,
Overreact.
not overreact, but be extra careful. Let's just put it that way.
Overreact. That's better. Plain and simple,
I'm trying to
overreact.
spin it in Joe's favor. Just being extra precautious.
No, it's a
precautionary.
hypo. That's
Yeah.
what he is. Listen, I get
Look,
it.
I'm glad that this has happened, and I assume the tick has been executed,
Even though I got,
incinerated.
even though
It's
I
fine.
had a tick on my leg like 15 years ago, and I got bit in camp, and it was just get it off my leg, change beds. I'm all right. Let's go. I went to practice Rex Road in 100-degree heat after getting bit by a tick.
To be fair, Joe can't walk up the stairs without suffering a
You got to
catastrophic
pray.
injury.
You
That-
gotta pray.
See, this is this.
We may
You
be
get
the most.
stigmatized. You get he's got a reputation now.
Uh-huh.
I feel like the first time it really happened was the injury on the stair,
Yeah. Like, how do you hurt
the
yourself?
non-contact injury.
Then
right?
there's the whole gout thing.
Yeah, that too. So it's always something with Rex. We may be, and I shouldn't even say this. Knock on, is this wood?
I
guess.
think it's
Yeah,
somewhat
some
wood. Yeah,
type
close
of-
enough.
Let me knock underneath. I
Okay.
think we may be the most athletic show on this state.
Well, to be fair, that sample would be skewed because you were an all-pro wide receiver in the NFL for 15 years,
But amongst the three of us, we have, like
Willie
15 years of experience.
was a multi-sport athlete in college.
Yes.
And my greatest athletic achievement was a walk-off error in Little League Baseball.
Was that?
But you swung, didn't you?
okay,
I
but
made
in your,
contact.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
all that matters.
you put the ball in play.
I put the ball in play. The ball clearly beat me to the bag, but the first baseman dropped the ball.
His fault.
Okay. I want to also span the rest of your athletic career.
Oh,
Yes.
God.
Were there other big moments in other sports?
I did have a nice game-winning putback rebound.
Yeah?
There you
Basketball.
go.
Okay, now we're talking.
Okay, absolutely.
So you hit the offensive glass.
Exactly.
Yes.
What grade?
That would have been in middle school, I think.
Okay. And what was the situation? Was it a buzzer beater, or was it like a big go ahead and one, or like
I think we were. I
did
think
the crowd
my
go
team,
crazy?
I think my team was at the line for 2 free throws.
Uh-huh.
It may have been a 1-and-1. We were down 1.
Okay.
The shooter missed the free throw. I grabbed the rebound. I laid it in as time expired. We won by 1.
Oh, see?
See, that should have been the
Exactly.
headliner.
That
I
should
put
be the
that above
headline.
the putting the ball in play on the baseball.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll massage my athletic resume.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, yes, we are the most athletically gifted show because
Yes.
of the two of you. I have nothing to do with it.
Hey, we talk about us as a group. We don't.
Okay,
It's
that's
not
fair.
a singular
We're
person.
not- are a team.
We're we, not you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Wait, well,
or
let's
an
get
I.
David's. What's your,
Oh,
your
yeah,
biggest
yeah.
moment on the field or the court? What's your
Ooh,
best
my best
the
moment.
biggest athletic moment?
Oh man, I hit a home run my freshman year.
There we go.
I didn't even do that.
There we
Okay.
go.
It was
Man.
pretty
What
We
was
got-
the situation?
It was, I think we were up by 2,
Okay.
and so I hit
Anybody on base?
I think one other person was on base.
Okay.
So we
big-
got a
big
we got a home run. We got to
Yeah.
put back. I mean,
Yeah.
come on,
Okay,
Willie.
We got it covered.
Derek
Exactly.
caught 1 or 2 touchdowns in the National Football League. I
Hey,
guess.
listen, we got it all,
Returned a
man.
few
Willie,
kicks or
You
punts for
know.
touchdowns.
Willie, went head to head with Shaq. I
did.
mean, yeah, he
Oh,
went
yeah,
head to
that's
head
true.
with
Yeah,
Shaq.
you
How many people can say they went head to head with Shaq and still stand here? Willie,
I've used my the fact that I was the same year as Shaq,
Uh-huh.
played a lot of games against Shaq. I didn't guard Shaq or anything like that.
man,
but
come on, we don't know
we
that.
can exaggerate a
Yeah,
little bit.
I mean,
you
you
know, I
was
was
on-
on the court at the
Yeah,
same time.
exactly.
I might have fouled him once. I
You
don't
might
know.
have swiped at the ball.
I don't ever think I took a shot near Shaq for fear of getting blocked, but I've used that in 2 truths and a lie.
Uh-huh.
You ever do that? You
Yes.
give 2 things about you that
Uh-huh.
are true.
Do everybody
one that's
figure
not-
that one out? Do they
It
figure out?
depends on the crowd. It
Oh,
depends on the
okay,
crowd.
Okay.
If I threw that out on this sports talk show, I think people would see that, but people that don't know me very well,
Exactly.
like sometimes the hockey crew,
Uh-huh.
I
They
can
don't
slip
know
that
if-
by. They don't
Ah,
really go, you
ah.
didn't play against Shaq.
Yeah,
Can I
I
get on
did.
that? I did. I did.
Oh man! All right, let's get into some sports. Even though that
Yesterday-
was sport. related.
Yesterday, Willie, we had Teron Davenport on the program. and you asked him a question about L'Jarius Sneed. You asked Teron if the Titans could count on Sneed to be healthy and ready to go when training camp starts. And Teron said that we would get an update on that today when Brian Callahan addressed reporters. Well, he's done that. And here was what Brian Callahan said about L'Jarius Sneed.
Done while he's been here, and just is the plan to handle him differently this offseason than kind of load management stuff because of last offseason?
Yeah, I think there's a healthy balance there. He's coming back injury wise, so the rehab process is ongoing. He's in a good spot. Excited about where he's at, but there's definitely a part of like to practice more. I think he's on the same page too, where, you got to balance those things. There's a management part for a lot of players, but there's also you got to practice and get better at your craft and continue to improve. So we'll balance that. I feel good about where that process is for us and for him. I think he's well on the same page as well.
So that was a bit of an update on L'Jarius Sneed's health. And
Well, how would we interpret that, Derek? What was your sense of that answer?
That, okay.
'Cause I have my own opinion.
One, I think the days of load management, I think Brian Callahan wants that to be over with. That those days of L'Jarius Sneed not practicing, we're going to know it doesn't work for us. And you're getting older, and this whole knee not quad thing. So I think he's sort of like, listen, you need to practice more. You understand you need to practice more. That's one. The second is the injury. To me, he doesn't, even though he said
helmet to the thigh.
Yeah, even though he said, I like where he is physically. Where is he physically? Like, what is he doing? Like, is he
It didn't sound
doing
like he's going
drills?
to be out there.
And
full
it
gear,
was
full-
supposed to be just the quad, a deep quad bruise. They didn't say anything about surgery, to my knowledge. If they have, excuse me, but I didn't hear anything about.
During the season,
Mhm.
you didn't hear anything, and then suddenly
Exactly.
there was a surgery that ended the season. So
So he ended up having surgery
right.
at the end of the year. Like, how in depth was the surgery? Was it just a go in?
We haven't had a lot of details. on that.
Exactly,
Here's
or
an
was it a complete tear?
Here's a story about the surgery written by Nick Suss at the Tennessean.
Mhm.
It was published in early January. Tennessee Titans cornerback L'Jarius Sneed told reporters Thursday that he had surgery about 6 weeks ago. So that would be late November, I guess. Late November, to repair his strange, persistent quad injury that's kept him off the field since October and landed him on season-ending injured reserve. Sneed, who is wearing a brace on his left leg that tracks from his quad down to his shin, said he had a bone marrow injection procedure and has been wearing the brace since, but is scheduled to have it removed next week. He is walking without the aid of crutches.
So
it's a very unique injury.
Exactly,
that
but
but involving a bone marrow transplant, that's pretty extensive there.
But he is the one that told us he had surgery, not the team.
Well, that was
He's the one that came. He's the one that came out.
Theorists, who might I be talking about?
Yeah, Jared
started running
Exactly.
wild with that piece of it. That if they had been more upfront
Mhm.
from the beginning, that does not fuel the fire of people whose minds like to run a little wild.
Especially
on
if
that.
you.
So I always think it's better to be upfront
Mhm.
about injuries because you understand a little bit better of the timetables, what the player is dealing with,
Mhm.
and not being secretive about it. That was where they screwed that up because it's got everybody asking questions.
Now, was the bone marrow for the
I
quad
have
or was
no
it for the
idea.
knee or
well, no,
both?
for the quad. I believe for the surgery.
Yeah,
That's
but
what I
I'm
would-
saying that when they went in, was it okay? The quad is affecting the knee, which is making it worse. We need
well,
to
now,
do all
now
of
you're
this.
now you're going into Dr. Jarrett's.
Yeah, I'm
territory,
just saying.
'cause
No, I'm
Jarrett
just.
thinks
I'm,
that everything's
I'm
connected.
asking. Like,
I don't know. But this is where the Titans could help themselves and help L'Jarius Sneed
Mhm.
by educating people of what he's dealing with. Now, that answer by Callahan tells me that he is nowhere near practicing,
No.
even if he wanted to practice. And that, look, let's just be honest. I think we have to lower our expectations of what we're going to see from that guy this year. If we think we're going to see the guy who was a really, really good corner on the Chiefs, I don't believe we're going to see that guy. Not for a while. if at all. Like, I think it would be a pleasant surprise if he got near high-end cornerback play from the start of the season. Is that fair? Like, I think we're getting our hopes up too much if we're thinking, he should be ready. That answer tells me he's hedging his bets, because what is Brian Callahan more often than not? He usually is optimistic, way more optimistic than some coaches who will be very, very level, very tempering expectations on a lot of things. That's usually not Callahan. That was a temper expectations kind of answer.
But they didn't go out, and I know they drafted a corner, I think in the 6th round, but they didn't go out and address the corner position. And when he got a free agent, they didn't go out and address the corner position as if they were worried about L'Jarius Sneed coming back.
They have so many other things on the list that they have so many needs as a roster.
I get it.
They can't get them all.
I hope I'm pronouncing all of this correctly. This is in a story about L'Jarius Sneed's surgery from Paul Kaharski, written in January. Per the Cleveland Clinic, bone marrow aspirate concentrate is a biologic therapy for treating musculoskeletal injuries and diseases. A healthcare provider extracts it from your bone marrow and injects it into your injured tissues to help them repair and regenerate.
So it's so he had
it's an unfortunate injury. I mean, for kind of a freak thing that happened. But as we know, the backstory is there were there were issues with his knees that prevented him from practicing before this happened.
But he did.
So now to think that he's all of a sudden going to start practicing all the time is probably
fool's gold.
Yep. Right. And we had this conversation during the season that L'Jarius Sneed, despite not practicing and having a plan for his knees in Kansas City, didn't miss any games.
Right.
Played almost every snap. So I thought, hey, maybe it's not as big of a deal as I think it is. But with this information, perhaps I'm changing my tune. I don't know.
As far as him having to practice?
Well, remember, Jared's whole point about L'Jarius Sneed was that nobody else in the NFL wanted to trade for Sneed because of concerns about his knees.
When it came to trading a decent asset, a third-round pick, and paying him what was going to need to pay him, that there were probably Jared, I think, is exaggerating. He thinks they're the only team that was going after.
I can't wait to get that text on my phone about that report from the Vikings.
Look, Jared, I've heard him make this case a million times. I don't buy it. I've listened to it thoroughly, so I know the argument. It doesn't make sense. He's got a quote from some sportscaster over here. This guy. The bottom line is, I think Jared is at least onto something, that it wasn't like teams were lining up to say, I'll give you a first and a second for him. You're going to trade Sneed? We're all over that. There clearly were question marks. Clearly. I'll grant him that with the knees. And is this guy going to be able to sustain a high level of play at that position with whatever issues were determined from the knees? And the Titans have been burned on that, but not because of the knees, but
because of
this freak thing with the helmet to the knee.
But the way that they chose to go about it, the way they chose to inform everybody, led a lot of people to believe that, or a few people, y'all are hiding something, when in fact you should have came out and said, hey, listen, he had surgery 6 weeks ago. What kind of surgery? I mean, you could have just said he had the bone marrow surgery. You could have just said he had surgery, period, to repair the quad. If you would have said that at the beginning, then I think people would have been more willing to accept, okay, he's injured and it's not the knee. But when you don't say anything and you make it seem like, oh, he'll be back, he's just rehabbing, and all of a sudden 6 weeks later, the actual player, not the team, the player comes out and says he had surgery. Now everybody's thinking, why didn't you, just like when Brian Callahan sort of threw that in about Treylon Burks, oh, Treylon had surgery. And I'm thinking, like, today? No. It's the other day, last week, something. You didn't think that was newsworthy enough to tell, even though I know he's not playing, but to tell the fan base that he had surgery last week.
That didn't make sense.
It was like it was almost like you threw it in. Oh, I'm gonna throw it in at the end, and hopefully nobody asks anything about it. So when things like this with L'Jarius Sneed happens, yeah, everybody think you're honest and upfront and laughing and he's being transparent. Well, somebody's not being transparent because we have 2 episodes where it was the player. Well, 2 episodes where you chose to, one where the player notified, and then the second one is when you notified, but it was days after the surgery. That's what gets people to start thinking like, man, is he? Yeah, he's smiling in my face, and yeah, he has this calm demeanor, and yes, but is he really telling us the truth? Like, are you just like one of those dudes that they can laugh and make everything calm, but you're not telling me really what's going on, or you're withholding all of it? Is Brian Callahan that type of guy? I'm not sure. But when you have 2 instances like this that come up, people tend to wonder.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the L'Jarius Sneed situation. He is still rehabbing that quad injury he suffered early last season. The whole knee thing. L'Jarius Sneed, your thoughts. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we will bring in Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst. We'll discuss this with him and more. Again, coming up next with Tim Hasselbeck, 615-737-1025. Tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on Scranton Wilkes-Barre at First Horizon Park. Pregame begins at 6:20 and first pitch is at 6:35. Coverage is also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan is presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. D. Mace Vingan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com by the dual threat, ESPN NFL analyst, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, Tim Hasselbeck. Hello, Tim. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you acknowledging my dual threatness.
Yes. Well, we discussed this last time, so I'm making sure that we live up to our end of the bargain. So, Tim, we were just talking about L'Jarius Sneed. Brian Callahan said not too long ago that Sneed is still rehabbing from both his pre-existing knee injury and the quad injury he suffered early last season that kept him out of 2/3 of the year. How much should we temper our expectations that L'Jarius Sneed can be a meaningful contributor to this Titans team this coming season?
Yeah, I mean, look, you get an injury and then you're still slow to come back. Sometimes when you get updates on people's health in May, that are not super encouraging, sometimes it's bracing for impact, right? I mean, just think of the Derek Carr situation, right? Like, you hear some news like, oh no, his shoulder is bothering him and it's not really coming back because of something that happened. And then, a month or two later, it's, Derek Carr's retired. So I don't think it's usually a good sign when you're getting a medical update that's not promising in May, because typically speaking, I think teams would say, look, our guys are on schedule with the rehab, and we'll see what they're like in terms of if they're limited participants and stuff like that. So, I don't think it's an encouraging update, I guess is, I would put it there. And then, so, what would you have the expectations be? For a 28-year-old, I would, I'd be hopeful, but, maybe not super encouraged.
Yesterday, Tim, we spent a lot of time talking about the benefits of young athletes playing multiple sports. We talked about Cam Ward specifically and how it could help him in the long run. You're an ex-quarterback. You're currently a coach. How important is it for quarterbacks specifically to have a multi-sport background in order to be successful at the highest level?
Look, I think it's really important. I think I only know of one person. I'm not going to say his name. He didn't end up being a very good pro. I think I only know one person who basically was like just a quarterback. Wasn't doing other stuff in terms of basketball, baseball, whatever it may be. So I do think it's really important. I think there's an element of, flexing the competition muscle, right? So like if you only, if you only play football, you're going to play, somewhere between 10 and 15 games and that's it. So like you're not, you don't have an at bat. You're not on the wrestling mat. You're not playing in a basketball game. You're not, I don't think that that's healthy, or conducive to, to playing quarterback. I'll give you an example. So my son was at Elite 11 competition out at State College over the weekend. He's a baseball player. And so like he's been playing baseball, and, part of the conversation, with the guys that are, running the Elite 11 stuff, they said, there's never been a quarterback that has regraded. So been 19 when he graduates high school that's gotten drafted. And I thought, wow, like, isn't that something? And that, I saw an article, recently basically about that of, some of these reclassified, regraded high school athletes, maybe become good college players because they're, a year older, you're more mature, that type of thing. But it doesn't translate into your path to the National Football League. And so, like, I do think there are things like that, like playing multiple sports, like, again, flexing that competition muscle, that are important for guys' development, in terms of, what their full potential is. So, I think that, and I think time on task. I've mentioned it to you before, like for Cam Ward to leave college with, nearly, 2,400 pass attempts, leaving college. I think that's an important factor and a big deal.
Tim, that is a fascinating point about the reclassifying, because I do feel like a lot of families do that. Even if it's not your junior year in high school, it may be a little bit earlier where you're thinking ahead and saying, boy, if he's a little bit older, this could be good. And that's great data, because I do think it all evens out over time. It is interesting, but because baseball, that's a big thing too. Like, hey, if he reclassifies, he's going to be a 5-star next year, instead of right now, he's too young and they're not watching him. But Tim, as a high school coach, you've got the philosophy. You played a lot of sports. We just talked about playing more than one sport, how valuable it is, but you're also aware that you can get pulled in the direction of, hey, we've got fall baseball. Fall baseball wasn't a thing when I was growing up, and I was a teenager in Florida. But I would never thought of playing fall baseball. But now you're almost expected, if you're playing travel ball, that you're going to play in the fall.
Yeah, and I'll just give you the example. And here's the thing. So in the last 3 drafts, so to put a ball on that other point, players who turned 18 after April 1st of their senior year of high school were 4 times more likely to be an early round draft pick than those who turned 18 as a junior. 4 times is more likely. Okay. So that's a data point on that. And then to your point about playing multiple sports and, getting pulled in different directions and all of that stuff, I can, and look, I'm not trying to sound like some authority on this or anything like that. Like, I'm a dad just like you are, and just, like other, probably some listeners of, hey, like, what do we do with our kids? My daughter is a scholarship lacrosse player at Vanderbilt. Okay. She played volleyball in high school, and I thought it was important for her to not just play one sport. I thought it was important for her to have a different role on a different team. And I thought it was important. And I think it helped her athletic development. My son is going to go be a college quarterback. He still is playing baseball. Is there risk associated? Yeah. He got hit, by a pitch the other day, hit his right thumb. We thought he broke his thumb. It was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. But the benefits outweigh the risks. I can just tell you how I talk to coaches when they come to recruit our students, for me to say, look, this guy's a 3-sport varsity athlete at our school. Like, that's rare. It's remarkable. And so when he becomes full-time football and he becomes full-time in the weight room, the upside is going to be very different than somebody that you're recruiting who has decided I'm only going to play football. It's a conversation that I actually had with a Power 4 school this morning on a kid.
That's great.
So I like some coaches, I don't know what they're telling kids. I think some programs make it impossible to do both and all of that stuff. That is not how, that's not how I've parented. It's not how I coach, because look, I was a football, basketball, baseball guy, and it definitely helped me become a better football player.
Now, Tim, are those questions that that recruiters are still asking? This athlete, does he play multiple sports, and how good is he in multiple sports? Because obviously they're just looking at him on the football field, but when they come to your office, is that one of the leading questions? Like, hey, does he play? Does he wrestle? Does he play basketball? What else does he do?
Yeah, it's always one of the very first questions. You get questions about, somebody's grade. Can we get their transcript? That one, probably isn't talked about enough. That's a huge factor. But yeah, look, we have guys that go to our, coaches will say, oh, there's a basketball game tonight. Like, I'm going to come back. I want to see him play basketball. There's a baseball game this afternoon. I'm going to come back. I want to see him play baseball. If he runs track, what are his track times? Everybody always asks, what other sport does he play? What other sports does he play? Every school asks about all the kids. Does he wrestle? So it's wild to me. And I will tell you, look, I think there are some places that make it impossible. Right?
That's what I was going to ask, because you're new as the high school coach. So you had, I'm sure, build relationships with the other Ensworth coaches and say, okay, let's talk through, because it's very important, right? While one guy's out of season, that I think there's probably some self-serving football coaches like, hey, I don't know if you miss spring practice. I don't know if your job's going to be, but you've got to work with the other coaches and you've got to emphasize to the kid that you're going to be all right.
Yeah, you do. And some schools have enough kids that they're okay to say, oh, you want to play summer travel baseball? We're going to have these workouts that are quote unquote voluntary. And if you don't make them, then, then that's going to hurt your ability to play on our football team. Like, I know for a fact we
had 2 kids on my son's travel team that missed the big tournament at the end of the summer, the biggest one that we've been working towards, because the football coach would not let the 2 kids miss the first day
correct
of fall practice. The first day they would miss one day. Nope.
Yeah.
So they bailed on the baseball team at the end of the summer.
I will say to you, and I know that it goes on in the schools. Like, again, I'm new to this, right? Like, I'll say it, but like, shame on these coaches, man. Like, these are kids that are teenagers that, like, they don't know if they're going to be better at football or baseball. Like shame on the coaches for not working out. I'll just give you an example at our own school. We have a kid that is a fantastic athlete. He was on the golf team last year. Golf is a fall sport, but he'd love to play football. And I said, but he's a really good golfer. I said, you know what, man? You finish your golf season. Do what you got to do in golf. And then when that's done, like, come see us. And sure enough, when his golf season ended on October 7th or whatever, we got him heat acclimated and all the stuff that you need to do. And then, and he, as soon as he was available, whatever it was, 10 days later, he played in a football game for our high school. Like, and I'm good with that. Like, and I'm good with the kids that I know their summer baseball schedule. Like, that's just how, look, I don't know. Look, and listen, maybe we won't win as many games because of it, but to me, it's worth that trade.
Now, we haven't spoken with you, Tim, since Brock Purdy signed his deal. What do you think of it? Because to me, I think San Francisco missed that window to take advantage of while he still was on his rookie contract. Yep. And now they have to fork over a lot of money, and the team is not going to look the same moving forward.
Yeah. So, I mean, here's what I'd say. Yeah, you missed the rookie contract. Like, that's a problem. But what I would say is I think he deserves to get paid too.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So, like,
absolutely.
And that's my thing. It's like, I'm never going to feel bad for a team that was, paying a guy, $800,000 a year to be the leader of $1 billion organization. You know what I mean? Like Dak Prescott is like making $850,000, playing quarterback as a 4th-round draft pick for the Cowboys. Like I'm not gonna feel bad for them when they got to pay him $50 million a year, right? Like, so same drill was happening in Washington with Kirk Cousins. So, like, did they miss the window? Probably so. Probably because of the injury, and I guess it was in the NFC Championship game. But all these other places are still good that are paying their quarterbacks a lot of money. And so, beat the market at other positions, do other things because, like, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a quarterback that's not worth getting paid that much, that can't play?
Oh, no, I want to be able to have the ability to pay him that much. That means we're a good team, more than likely.
So I think that's what I would say, and it's funny, man, I was having a conversation with somebody, getting ready for NFL Live yesterday and saying, all right, well, do you think, like, there are some people that would argue, like, hey, Brock Purdy's not worth it, but, like, they would be okay with whatever the deal Justin Fields signed, or, you know what I mean? Or it's like, wait a second, like, and this, D-May, sometimes the way you come into the league, man, that you can't ever shake that.
Oh, no,
like,
you can't.
And it's wild because we all know that people get the draft wrong. And we all know that some guys just, it's like, well, if you could redraft, you would have been a 1st rounder, right? Like, when did you get taken?
4th.
Okay. So, and how many catches do you have in your career? You had over 1,000 catches. Like, how many catches do you have in your career?
Close to 1,000.
Okay, so you got 1,000 catches in your career. How many of the guys drafted in front of you?
None of them. Yardage, touchdowns, catches, years played. The clearest person is Ike Hilliard, but nobody
Yeah,
else.
so
Best believe
they
I
could
know that.
redraft it.
I think that
Clearly,
list
I
is
hit a
actually
nerve.
tattooed on his arm somewhere.
Clearly,
No, I've got
I
it right
hit a
here.
nerve, but like, if you could redraft it, everyone would redraft it. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
like, but you probably felt it every time your deal was up. Be like, all right, guys, like I get it. I was a 4th rounder, but like my production is my production. So yeah, like, so I'm saying all that to say good for the Niners to not do what Washington did with Kirk Cousins, because they had been better off just signing him once they knew he could play. You know, good for the Niners that they didn't do what the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott, because they dragged their feet, and by doing that, you know, they've painted
They had to play him
themselves into
more.
a corner.
Yeah.
Well, and look what they've done. They're now painted into a corner on that.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
you know, good on the Niners, because in 6 years, when Purdy's still their starter, it's going to look like a very inexpensive deal.
Tim Hasselbeck, ESPN NFL analyst, head coach of the Ensworth Tigers, joining us on D. Mace, Vingen, and Donick. Great stuff as always, Tim. We'll chat next week.
Okay, hey, I'm jumping on with Ike Hilliard now.
You got a show?
Tell him Derek said hello, please.
Tell all of them I said hello.
All right. See you guys.
Thank
Yeah.
you, Tim. 615-737-1025. We have some reaction to the L'Jarius Sneed news, and we will get to that coming up next. If you have reaction, call us, text us, 615-737-1025. Tune in to the Indy 500 race on 1025 The Game this Sunday. Coverage begins at 10 a.m. and is brought to you by Twin Peaks, home of the 29-degree beer. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. So Brian Callahan said earlier this morning that L'Jarius Sneed is still rehabbing from both the knee injury and the quad injury. Callahan also said that Sneed is progressing as expected, but the way he explained the situation did not at all sound encouraging.
Now, start that again, because rehabbing from the knee injury and the thigh injury, this is fueling Jared's thing. I didn't think there was a new knee injury. Was there?
Well, there's still the management of the knee injury, I suppose.
Yes.
And then
that's
rehabbing,
right,
and
but
then
nothing,
rehabbing
but
the quad
nothing new.
injury.
Let's clarify that.
Yes.
because Jared's going to run wild with that. I can just
Yes.
feel it.
Let's clarify.
But we have something else for Jared today. That
Oh, we do.
we are gonna present some information to Jared, and we are going to present it loud.
Willie is giddy about this.
Yeah,
I think
he's-
D-Base
yes,
is
yes.
with me.
Oh, I'm with
we-
you. Best believe
yes.
I'm with you.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully you can get
We
through
have
the
some
next
data.
2 hours. Hopefully you can get
The
through the next 2
excitement is
hours.
just palpitating.
Yes. The suspense is killing him. Jack on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHoney.com, talking about our discussion about L'Jarius Sneed. I don't understand this. What does it matter who tells us who's hurt? It's no one's business. Nobody is wondering. Nobody cares until game time. Save that madness. Well, Sneed is one of the highest paid players on the Tennessee Titans. And theoretically, he should be part of this team's rebuild. So when you trade a 3rd round pick for a cornerback, give him a big money contract, he misses most of last season, and there are questions about his effectiveness entering this season.
And he wasn't super effective before the injury last year. That's
Right.
another thing that bothers a lot of people about it. And I think I had one texter
Mhm.
on my phone, so let's call it a text
A personal.
driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com that said it's a sunk cost. He
Mhm.
wasn't playing that well anyway. It's time to just focus on other things. He's dead weight at this point. And I'm not going that far,
Mhm.
but like I said in our first segment, my bar is really low for him. I'm not getting my expectation level up high that you're going to see the L'Jarius Sneed that you saw in Kansas City. I'll be pleasantly surprised if we see that at any point going forward here.
There's no expectation for me in regards to him. I just got to see him play. So until he gets on the field and until I see him play, I have no expectation for him. Why? Why should I?
Which is not a great thing to say about someone who makes
Right.
so much
No,
money.
but what
And
I'm
it
saying
goes
is
back-
that-
it goes back
but
to the decision to go for it. I did not have a problem with them trading for Sneed.
No.
Not a big problem, but I was wary of making a move like that where the team was on the roster. That's more of a move to try to add a guy to put you over the top.
Mhm.
And that team was not in that position where they were one player away from being a good team. So that's the only thing I question. What I think you sold me on,
Mhm.
Derek, was that, he's not 30.
Mhm.
He's still in his 20s. So you hope that in picking a guy like that up, that he's around for 2, 3, 4 seasons. And as the roster comes around, he's still got tread on the tires. But now I think the tread has been, compromised here
Mhm.
because of this new injury and what happened last
But
year.
they
He
were-
did not. He was not very good last year.
They just were not the way it's sort of, being portrayed as they were just not upfront with it, and they drug their feet with it. And it could have just been, and I don't know if it was a quad or a knee. I don't know. It could have been just the quad.
And the important part to emphasize here
Mhm.
is that we do not have footage
Yeah.
of the play that led to the quad injury. We've heard it was a helmet to the quad
Mhm.
against the Colts, but there, as far as I know, there was no broadcast footage of that injury. So we can't say, well, look at what happened here. We don't have the slow motion video, the Zapruder film, if you want, about this injury, which fuels the conspiracy theory.
Yeah, but I don't care. I don't necessarily care how it happened. It happened, but the way y'all sort of, let it get out or sort of presented it to everybody was kind of shady in a sense. You know,
Yeah.
you're
It was
saying
not
and
very
being
transparent.
vague about one thing, and then the player comes out, you know, and say I've had surgery and all. It's too much sort of, you know, nobody know exactly what's happening. And again, it could have just been a quad injury, but to me, I know as a football guy that played this sport, that when I have a quad injury, the first thing they want is to strengthen up that knee too. They want to make sure that that quad injury doesn't affect that knee. And if you already got a bad knee, that ups the chances even more that it will affect your knee somehow, some way. So y'all could have just said that, like the quad, you know, because of, you know, the severity of it, it has affected his knee. So we just want to shut him down, allow him to rehab and do that. But instead of doing that, y'all were vague about everything.
And the texter is right on in that it's really nobody's business to some degree.
Oh, it is everybody's business.
But and the biggest thing is, I think it has hurt Snead's reputation. Like there's an implication that he's not tough or he's injured. You know,
Oh, I don't question his toughness.
Well, that's the thing. But I think if they had been more transparent about it, I think Snead, there would not be as many questions about, well, what's going on with this guy? Does he not want to play?
I think Snead sort of got
people take it to another level when they don't know. They speculate instead of, so I think sometimes transparency, even though you're revealing things you don't have to, helps the player and the team.
Now, when Snead addressed the sort of scrum that was there, I don't know if he walked into it or they came. However, he addressed.
Right.
Was he upset at the media scrum, or was he upset or irritated with how the Titans handled it? And it seems like all of a sudden now he has to answer all of these questions. Again, I'm not questioning his toughness whatsoever. I'm not in a place to do that, even though I am not questioning that man's toughness or anything like that. I'm just questioning how they handled this whole thing. And now to an extent where it is bleeding into the next offseason. It may even bleed into the training days or camp. It may even bleed into that. So y'all could have handled this a different way, but because you didn't, now look what it has become. Again, because he's not where, even though you say you're happy with him, where is he at? Is he running? Is he full go? I know he's probably still rehabbing, but what is the extent of the rehab? I'm saying it in quotations. What is the extent of the rehab? It's just because, listen, I had surgery on a broken scapula or a torn meniscus. My rehab at the beginning was different from my rehab, 3 months, 5 months later, 6 months later, 8 months later. The 8 months later was to maintain it, to make sure it stays strong. At the beginning, it was after surgery. What am I supposed to do after surgery to get my leg strong? So which phase is he at? Getting his quad strong or maintaining the strength of the squad? Where is he at? But Brian Callahan isn't saying anything. Again.
615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on L'Jarius Sneed on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. But coming up next, NFL owners are set to vote on a major change to the playoff seeding in the NFL playoffs. We'll discuss that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace Fingen and Donick 1025, 1063 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, and Adam Vingan here with you. NFL owners are set to vote on a major change to the playoff seeding format in the playoffs, as proposed by the Detroit Lions. The Lions' proposal is that the 4 division champions and the 3 wildcard teams in each conference make the playoffs, but those 7 teams would then be seeded strictly by record, rather than assigning the top seeds to the division winners, which is how it's been done since the merger, with the wild cards to follow if teams have the same record. With wild cards to follow if teams have the same record. I forgot a period there. Being a division champion would be the first tiebreaker, regardless of head-to-head results. And Albert Breer of Sports Illustrated explained why the NFL may be open to this change.
The playoff reseeding thing is interesting to me because I think they have a this one, like I thought it was about fairness with what happened with the Lions and the Vikings last year. This is really more, I believe it or not, about making money and about the end of the season, about week 17 and week 18, and creating more compelling matchups. And they think in an open seeding system that they would have more matchups. There was a slide that they presented to all the owners that showed how all of these different teams would have had way more possibilities going into week 18 last year if it was an open seeding system. So there was some thought like, okay, like, should we really look at this for the good of week 6, week 17, week 18? This thing was even further away, though, from getting voted through. My understanding is they only had a handful of teams that were good with this. So, are they going to flip more than half the room? I don't think so. But I think the league, and the reason the commissioner tables it and brings it to the spring meeting is because he wants it passed. And the reason he wants it passed is because he wants as appealing a product as he can possibly sell to the broadcast partners. And the better matchups you have down the stretch, the easier it is to do that.
So this is a really good question that Albert Breer and Connor Orr in the MMQB podcast, where they were kicking this around, got to. And the question was, who ultimately will make the decisions on seeding and other rules? Football people who want the best equity, fairness, competition, competitive balance, all of the things that go into running a league from a football standpoint, or the business side of things, the entertainment side of things, where it's run by, hey, if we could get 3 or 4 more games that mean something in the last 2 weeks, that will be better for ratings and it will get us more revenue. Unfortunately, the latter wins out, right? More often than not, the owners side with the latter. They're not listening to the football people who might make a decision that's based more purely on fairness and competition as opposed to money. And I think that's here. So specifically on the seeding, I had never thought about that part that Breer brought up there. But I am for keeping it the way it is because of the way the schedule is. All 10-7, 11-6 records are not created equal because of the divisions you play. The strength of schedule could be very different between 2 teams with the same record. And therefore, I think at the end of the day, I know the Lions got screwed. Teams get screwed every now and then. I think you got to deal with it. I think the best way to do it is the way they have it now.
Well, actually, I think it was the Vikings who got screwed because Detroit beat Minnesota in the final game of the regular season.
Yes.
Detroit got the bye.
That's what I meant.
Minnesota,
I meant Minnesota,
right?
yeah.
So that's why I find this interesting that it was Detroit
that brought it up.
That
It could have been them.
Right. It could have been them. It wasn't. It ended up happening to Minnesota, which went on the road and lost to the Rams, right?
Got destroyed by the Rams.
But to me,
the meltdown by Sam Darnold and other members of the team.
To me, the incentive is what? To win your division. That's your incentive. obviously you want, if once you start placing in the playoffs, you want to be amongst the top 4 or top 2 in the conference, so you can get a bye. Was the top 2 get a bye?
Now it's only one.
Just one. So you want to be in that range of still competing for that one spot, so you can get that bye. But if you don't get that bye, there should be a reward for winning your division, and the reward should be you get a home game. And after that, should they reseed in the playoffs? I mean, I don't know in that regards, but the whole thing to me is win your division, let it take care of itself. It's been that way for the longest. Nothing has gone wrong. Yeah, there may be a couple of teams here and there every other year that sort of gets the short end of the straw. Not to say they don't make the playoffs, but they get the short end of the straw as far as having or not having a home playoff game that first round. But at the end of the day, the system that the NFL has, it has worked. So why even try to mess with it? I can see if you had a bunch of teams just complaining.
I always go back to the NFC wildcard playoff game when the 11-5 Saints had to go to the 7-9 Seahawks in the beginning of the postseason because the Seahawks won the NFC West with a 7-9 record. And that was the Beastquake game.
If they would have
for Marshawn Lynch.
Listen, just because
I didn't like it one bit.
Again, the better team coming into the game was who? The Saints.
The Saints were 11-5.
Yeah, they were the better team.
And they had to go on the road.
Yeah, so you can't. Just because you have to go on the road. If you are the better team, go out and win the game. Whether it's on the road, your place, in Mars, on Jupiter, win the game. Okay, that's basically what it boils down to.
So Detroit's proposal, the reason for the proposal, the Lions say is, quote, competitive equity, provides excitement and competition in late season games, rewards the best performing teams from the regular season. And Albert Breer writes this, quote, the provides excitement and competition portion is key for the NFL, which has become increasingly concerned about teams resting players in week 17 and 18 in preparation for the playoffs, with seeding locked up or at least narrowed down. The NFL analytics team showed owners a slide at the March meetings that explained how an open seeding system like the one Detroit proposed would make late games more relevant. In the current system, the Houston Texans went into week 18 locked into the 4th seed. In the adjusted system, seed numbers 4, 5, 6, or 7 would have been possibilities at that point. The Rams went into week 18 knowing they'd be number 3 or 4 in the NFC. In the adjusted system, they could have been 4, 5, 6, or 7. The Philadelphia Eagles went into week 18 set as the number 2 seed. In the adjusted system, they could have fallen to number 3 with a loss. All 3 of those teams rested starters in week 18 last year and wound up losing those games, then won in the first round, to some degree rewarding that strategy.
This is another philosophical point that was debated between Orr and Breer, which I think is the question. And that is, I know it's not good when you flip on games and you want to watch games in the last week of the season as a fan and teams are resting players, which I think last year was a good example. There was the Lions-Vikings game, and then maybe not even another real game that had both teams locked in trying to win. You had a bunch of games where at least one of the teams, if not both, didn't really care whether they won or not. But do you earn the right as a playoff team in this specific situation? You earn the right to decide if you want to rest your players. And so when you're asking players to play 17 games, someday maybe asking to play 18 games, somewhere in there, you got to give them a chance to get if it's not a bye week, you earn the chance to rest.
And again, what you're saying, Willie, is exactly right. Why should I be penalized? Because I've earned the right all the way up until the last week to say, finally, I want to rest my quarterback, or I want to rest this guy. This guy's dealing with a hamstring. I got my seating locked up. I'm going to rest my guys. That makes for a better first round or second round matchup, because now this guy's completely healthy because you were able to sit him. I don't understand why now all of a sudden it's just, oh, well, let's change the way, we've been doing the seeding or the way we do the end of the season as far as matchups. You earn your right to sit your players 1 through 15, meaning the first game through the 15th game, a lot of times there are at least 3 or 4 teams that pretty much know where they're going to fall, whether it be the number 1 or the number 7 slot. They have the right now to say, listen, we need to prepare. We need to be as healthy as possible going into the playoffs. This game means absolutely nothing. Let's rest our guys, because NFL, you will have a better game if I'm able to rest my starters and allow them to then play the next following week. You tend to have a better game. Why? Because people are healthy. They're ready to go. So I don't understand, again, why mess with it if it's not broken? Because this system, it's not broken. I mean,
because they're greedy.
Yeah, they want more money. I get it, but it's not. There's not. The fans are not screaming for this.
They're not doing it for the players and the football part of it. They're doing it for the entertainment and the TV ratings part of it.
Let's go to Eric on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Eric, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, you bring up schedule. Somebody made this point, which I wholeheartedly agree with. So last year, Detroit, Chicago, Minnesota, and
Green Bay.
Yeah, those 4 teams. Who did they play in the NFC? The 4 teams, the NFC South, which was by far the worst division in the NFC, and then the AFC. Who did they play? The AFC South, who was the worst division in the AFC. So a lot of that, they were able to bulk up a lot of those wins with those 2 divisions. They, of course, played the other teams in that division, but that's why they had so many outstanding records in that division. But who are they playing this year? For instance, the NFC North is now playing the NFC East, who has Philadelphia and Washington. Of course, in Dallas and Giants, who are not as good. And then the AFC, they're playing the AFC North this year. Baltimore, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, and Cleveland. And let's see what their records are this year. I agree with you. The schedules are never going to be fair or balance everything. But I'm just against getting rid of that. You have to reward division winners. And I think that's something that people are looking at, forgetting that. Somebody pointed that out. And I think that's a fine point. The fact that the NFC North played AFC South and the NFC South, who are probably the 2 worst divisions in each conference. And that's how they were able to bulk up a lot of those wins. So that's another thing to be looked at. You do talk about schedule. And just see how they do this year with those teams playing the NFC East and the AFC North. So we'll see if they're going to have those great records like they did last year. Guys, y'all take care of what all the kids do.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, Eric. Listen, Eric has a point. You know, when you start to look at divisions, that's why, you know, when we're looking at the Titans and their schedule, it's like, oh, they got to have an easy schedule. No, they don't have an easy schedule. That schedule is not easy by far, and especially some of the other information that you and I talked about, Adam, off air. This is not an easy schedule. So every year presents its own, you know, sort of problem or not ideal situation. But you can't, to me, you can't then sort of go in there and change rules just because every season is different. You know, it's worked thus far. Leave it this way until there's an outrage amongst everybody. Because right now, who's outraged about the way it has been seeded? One team, the Lions, and maybe another. But if you're talking about fan bases, I don't think anybody's upset. It's like, okay, it happened that year. Maybe my team will be the team that benefits from it next year.
Let's go to Steven on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Steven, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Well, good afternoon, guys. One element I don't think is being considered is if you reformat the playoff seeding to what they're talking about, you are going to lose some of these iconic moments. The Music City Miracle doesn't happen because the Titans aren't playing the Bills that week. Seattle won the division at 9-7, and they screwed everything up. You don't have the Beastquake run in 2011 because Seattle's not hosting the Saints. So you're going to lose these magical playoff moments just so that way a team with a better record can host the game. Those moments are magical because of the underdog story.
Thank you for the call, Steven.
And listen, Steven is right. Yeah, Steven is right from the standpoint of those magic moments. But I do believe there can be magical moments made in those games, which they are sort of.
Yeah, I think you could argue that the same amount of magic will happen regardless of who's playing.
But I get what he's saying as far as those those moments in a game that sort of can potentially get taken away. Again, it's
There's
You
no
know,
perfect way to do it.
exactly. It's just not.
They would still be some things that don't work out quite right for a
Mhm.
team or two if you switched it to this. All right, you're never going to solve all of the problems. It's not. I think no matter what sport we're talking
Mhm.
about, there's going to be some times where like, oh man, that's a tough draw
Yeah.
for X team.
We talk
Or-
about it a lot in the Stanley Cup
Yeah,
playoffs.
yeah.
But that is what I think. That's what makes the NFL the league that it is, because of situations like the New Orleans Saints and the Seattle Seahawks.
Quit bringing it up.
Yeah,
See,
I know. But
Ugh.
Seattle,
I can't even talk right now.
but New Orleans heads northwest. They are a better team on paper, and if you watch the season, they were a better team. Period. But the sort of story of it is, you're going to this team's place. They're an underdog. Now this underdog, they got an added advantage, the crowd. So you go into the underdogs and you're supposed to win this game, but all of a sudden now you have this iconic game by this running back that really sort of propelled, his career. And you took a team in the Seattle Seahawks, and that probably helped start everything for them moving forward. So you had their own story within it. And then, yes, I understand Satan fans are upset. I get it. But y'all should be upset with not that. Y'all should be upset with the hit. Don't be upset because y'all lost against Seattle. Be upset with the pass interference,
Well,
not
that
pass
came
interference.
5,
I know,
6, 7
but
years
I know,
later.
but just be upset about that.
Oh, trust me.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Y'all
worry
got-
about that.
Y'all got
To this
enough
day.
anger for that.
Yeah.
That, going to
Let's just
Seattle.
take it all of my favorite teams' scabs right now. Let's just do that on the
But
air.
going to Seattle and losing to Seattle, that happens in the world of the NFL, where teams seem to be better, have better records, and end up losing in the first round of teams. It happens.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the proposal at the NFL owners meetings about potentially changing the playoff format. Coming up next, what would the AFC and NFC playoffs look like had these new rules taken effect this past season? We'll share that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game.
Hey, if you're maxed out on credit cards or struggling with high interest debt, I want you to listen closely. You can pay this off in days with Loan Pronto's Rapid Equity Loan. If you're a homeowner, you need to be listening to this. Without touching your low rate first mortgage, you can get cash out now. You can have no appraisals, no waiting, and no BS. This is the Rapid Equity Loan Program at Loan Pronto. Your home equity is yours. Get cash out, consolidate that debt down to one low monthly payment, and you'll lower your monthly expenses. Call Loan Pronto with a free instant home appraisal and see how much cash you can get today. And then you put your plan in order. Loan Pronto is A+ rated by the BBB and have nearly 2,500 5-star Google reviews. Call Loan Pronto now. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, and MLSconsumeraccess.org.
This week's Nashville's best deal is Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon with a buy one, get one free admission. Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon, where parking, tubes, and sunscreen are always free. Get this great deal now at theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan talking about the Lions' proposal to change the playoff format. And this is important to note that the Lions' initial proposal brought to NFL owners in March would have reseeded the entire playoffs starting in the wild card round, meaning all 7 teams from each conference to make the playoffs would be seeded in order of regular season record. The modified proposal would essentially leave the wild card round as is. Still, non-division winners with good regular season records would benefit from the change if they advance to the divisional round. So I was explaining to Derek during the break that under the original proposal in the AFC playoffs, I think the one major difference would have been the matchup between the Houston Texans and the LA Chargers. As we know, the Texans won the AFC South with a 10-7 record. The Chargers did not win the AFC West, but they had an 11-6 record. So under the original proposal, Houston would have traveled to Los Angeles to play at the Chargers, despite the fact that the Texans won the AFC South. That is no longer on the table.
Okay.
And it shouldn't have been on the table in the first place.
So the AFC playoffs under the reintroduced proposal by the Detroit Lions, nothing really would have changed because all 4 division champions won in the wild card round. So it still would have been Kansas City versus Houston and Buffalo versus Baltimore. As The Athletic explains, quote, the Texans wouldn't have been impacted if the modified proposal had been in play, as I just explained. They still would have hosted an opening round game, and they were going to have to go on the road for the divisional round because they were the 4th seed. They traveled to play the Chiefs. Under the original proposal brought by the Lions, Houston would have lost the right to host its first round home game because the Texans owned a 10-7 record and the Chargers had an 11-6 mark, but owners shot down the idea of reseeding at the start of the playoffs. So in the AFC, under the resubmitted proposal by the Lions, nothing would have changed because the one thing that would have changed, which was Houston going to LA, despite winning the AFC South, was taken off the table.
Well, it seems like to me, the Lions, because they are the ones that proposed this, it seems like the Lions believe that their division will remain one of the toughest divisions in all of sports. And they don't want to have a second round matchup with the second place team in their division, which would have been Minnesota. Because why would you propose something like this if it wasn't to the benefit of you as a team? Because to me, the last year worked.
Right.
And
to me, you shouldn't change a rule because of how strong or not strong a division is now. You should, because it's not going to change that way.
It's cyclical. It's
in
all these
10
divisions
years,
change. Yeah.
The strongest division could become the weakest division and vice versa. So that's not the reason to change a rule. Philosophically, I remember this. Craig Leopold, Adam, back in the day, there was a rule that the NHL did to where they decided to build rivalries and schedule more games against your own division. And after a couple of years of that, you were playing your division teams about 8 times a year. And a lot of people are like, well, this isn't good. We need to spread it around a little bit more. Let's make sure everybody plays everybody, etc. Just about everybody was on board, except for Craig Leopold. You know why? Because in the Predators division, you had the Blackhawks, the Blue Jackets, and the Blues, who at the time all were awful. And the Predators were just racking up wins against these teams in the division. They had an advantage. So they voted accordingly. And that's probably not the best thing for the league, right? You're voting for what helps you as opposed to what helps the game.
In the NFC, there would have been more changes under this proposal. So under the current format, the Commanders, who were the 6th seed in the NFC playoffs, after upsetting the Buccaneers, they traveled to Detroit for the divisional round, and the Commanders upset the Lions in the divisional round. The Eagles hosted the Rams, who beat the Vikings. Under the proposed new format, the divisional round matchups would have changed, because the Commanders had a better record than the Rams. So the Lions would have faced the Rams and the Eagles would have faced the Commanders in the divisional round.
And I could
playoffs.
live with that. If you want to tweak it at that point, I think that's more of a good compromise. So yeah, I can understand. That makes more sense.
I honestly didn't hate the original idea.
I don't like it.
I understand Derek's point, and Derek would
division,
know.
a division winner is a division winner, and the divisions are scheduled. You have the same
Differently.
schedule in your division, with the exception of 2 games, right? So that's why I think you have to stay true to the importance of winning the division. That's why I'm for that.
I know. I remember when this proposal was first made public a couple of months ago. Again, Derek played. He knows the importance of winning the division and what that should mean. I'm like, hey, if you win the division at 7-10, you shouldn't be hosting a team that went 12-5. That's just my opinion.
It happens on occasion.
Hey, my
It
thing
does
is,
happen on occasion.
if you're 12-5, you should have won your division.
But divisions are not created equal.
Yes, they
So
are.
don't you
All
think
of
the
them are created equal.
This the second one I think is more of a compromise,
Yes.
which
It
balances both.
It preserves the home game for the division winner in the wild card round. But then after that, I think this is a fair compromise.
Listen, the NFL tells you that there's parity. They didn't say there's just parity amongst the top 8 teams. They're saying there's parity amongst all 32 teams. So, hey, it is what it is. Win your division, and you would get a home game. If you don't win your division and you finish 14-3, then so be it. You know?
One texter is making fun of the way I say Houston because I swallow my H. It's
I've always thought that, like, is he saying Houston or Houston?
Houston.
But I know I have my own troubles with words, so I don't say anything. I'm used to it now.
My college basketball coach, Eddie Fogler, my 4 years, same 4 years as Allen Houston, who played at Tennessee. And he would always do the same thing. We would imitate our
Houston.
coach. Houston. Allen Houston.
Jared from Spring Hill says this seems like this is only for AFC South punishment. That was Jared from Spring Hill on our text line. Another texter says, I'm totally with the reseeding idea. Division winners get rewarded with a playoff spot. Seed the playoffs appropriately.
It's all about, and listen, I just think because this league is the best league for multiple reasons. And I think this is one of the reasons that you can have a team that may have a lesser record than another team, but because you didn't win your division, now it levels the playing field. And I hate to bring this up, I'm sorry, but we keep on referring back to it. No,
the B-Squake game.
Yeah, if Seattle goes to New Orleans, it's probably a rout. It's probably a rout. It's not a good game. Drew Brees throws for about 8 touchdowns and we're done. But because they have to go, and mind you, I've played in that stadium, that 12, that is an advantage. That levels the playing field. A 7-9 team going, that completely levels the playing field. Why wouldn't you want to level the playing field there? You get a better game. And what happened? The Beast-Quake game came into existence, and we still talk about it to this day. So I'm with this. It's sort of the David and Goliath. Who doesn't love the story? So, you don't like the story? Oh, yeah, it depends.
It depends on which side you're on.
It depends on which side you're on. Yeah, it depends on a lot of things. But the premise of the story is the smaller guy, the weaker guy seems to be your girl. They end up winning. You know, that's just like Seattle. The inferior team, because they played at home, they had a shot. And that's all we want as sports competitors is a shot. A shot.
So you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance. If I go to New Orleans, there's no chance. But if they have to come here, there's a chance.
Okay, I'm looking back at the 2010 standings right here. The Seahawks won the NFC West with a 7-9 record, tied with the Rams. The Niners were 6-10. The Cardinals were 5-11. The Falcons were 13-3 and won the NFC South. The Saints at 11-5. The Bucks at 10-6, and the Panthers at 2-14.
There you go. And it
Seems
got
fair.
and it has one of, and because of that, they were able to produce one of the best offensive outputs we've seen in a good while. The way he dominated the game, meaning beast mode. He went into beast mode, which now has carried him into acting and everything else, along with his Super Bowl.
So what you're saying is, if not for that game,
Yeah.
Marshawn Lynch would have never become a thing.
He never would have been in the last movie I saw.
Which was what?
It was a pretty good movie. It was like it's on Netflix. What was it called? It's called something. A guy selling. He used to be like an assassin, but then now he wants to change his life. So he moves away from his brother because his brother is the head guy of this sort of ring. So he's like, I don't want to do this no more.
Love Hurts?
Yeah, Love Hurts. That's what it's called. Love Hurts. And Marshawn Lynch is in that. He plays a big part. So if he doesn't have the beast mode, which led to the Super Bowl, he may not be in love. What was it again? Love Notes? Love Notes. He wouldn't have been in Love Notes.
Love Hurts.
Love Hurts. He wouldn't have been in that. Love Hurts, Love Notes.
Love does
Hell,
hurt.
it's love. It's love, no matter what.
I somehow missed this text, but I think it's a good one to go to break on from our conversation at the beginning of the show. One texter says, Willie did not go head to head with Shaq. He went head to chest.
Fair.
Pretty much.
As do most people.
Yeah.
But he tried so hard.
But he stood his ground.
Did
Wherever that ground was.
No, I did not stand my ground.
You mean the floor?
You stood your ground when he pushed you back. You stood that point until he pushed you back.
I gave some ground. Yeah.
615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your thoughts on this playoff reseeding proposal. But there's another proposal that's out there that's getting a lot of attention. We'll touch on that as well. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game.
Hello, everyone. This is Derek Mason. Happy, what is that? Tuesday? Today is Tuesday, a rainy Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday.
It's Taco Tuesday, rainy Tuesday. I'll take it as long as I'm here to tell you it's Tuesday. So you've heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution or some type of goal to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. But I got some solutions for you, okay? Because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach, people. And listen, as I've told you before, you're not the only person that deals with this. I am as well. That's why I have an appointment Wednesday to take care of all of this, because I'm going in for my comprehensive weight loss program, which is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So when I go in there, they are going to tailor-made one specifically for me. And I will tell the listeners what my experience was like, tomorrow. I will tell you tomorrow what my experience was like. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, talking some rule proposals. We talked about the playoff seeding format as proposed by the Detroit Lions. Also on the docket, the tush push. The Green Bay Packers have submitted a revision of their rule proposal that would more broadly ban pushing or pulling the ball carrier anywhere on the field. In the proposal's updated language, according to ESPN, offensive players cannot assist the runner except by individually blocking opponents for him. The Packers also eliminated, quote unquote, immediately at the snap in the updated language.
I think that's the key, is because D-Mace, when you played, there was a rule that I think changed in 2005 where they put this into effect, that you couldn't aid the
runner.
Yeah. Or I think that's when they stopped it. I think they had a rule up until 2005 that you couldn't aid the runner. Is that right, Adam? I believe in 2005 they loosened up the rule because it was just hard to officiate all of that stuff. They didn't think it was a big deal. But now that it's come back, and this comes down to one team's innovation, should you change the rule just because one team is so good at it? But philosophically, I think that could be legislated well, that just the ball carrier at the snap, basically the quarterback. You can't push the quarterback. You can do other things, but just you can't run into the back of the quarterback and push him.
According to Tom Pelissero of NFL Network, this iteration of the proposed ban is broader and mirrors the language that was on the books for the NFL from the league start in 1920 through the 2005 season, banning players from pushing or pulling the runner in any direction.
So basically, you're reinstating an old rule that I think is the right thing to do. I don't think you should be able to push the quarterback.
So here's where it gets sort of iffy, because you're right. I mean, that law that rules in, nobody said anything about it. And for whatever reason, I'm sure there were probably coaches. So they end up changing it. What I want to know is this: what happens when it's 4th and 1, and you know how this goes? It's a standstill, and they're waiting. Like, can he get pushed this way? Can he get pushed that? They're holding on to that whistle a little bit longer to see if they can get the yardage needed.
Right.
So
And
what happens? Because
everybody's
everybody's in there now. So what? See, that's why I'm saying, like, just leave it the way it is.
I think you're not alone. A lot of people think that you should just leave it the way it is.
Because there are going to be instances where in an open field,
when it's a tactical move where you line up the big dude right behind Jalen Hurts, or other teams are doing it now too. That is the essence of the rule to me. And that would be pretty easy to see. You just can't do that. I think then we could live with when it's a huge rugby pile and both teams have all the guys pushing the pile. I think at that point, we can reasonably say nobody's aiding the quarterback specifically at that point. I don't know. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think that's a little different.
Is it just aiding the quarterback, or is it
just the quarterback?
It's just the quarterback, or is it aiding players?
Well, the first proposal was aiding players, all players, but I think they have modified it to just say the person who takes the snap, whether that's a quarterback or somebody in a wildcat or something like that. If you put the running back in there to take
the new proposal, the revised proposal, no offensive player may push or pull a runner in any direction at any time or lift him to his feet, use interlocking interference by grasping a teammate or by using his hands or arms to encircle the body of a teammate in an effort to block an opponent, push or throw his body against a teammate to aid him in an attempt to obstruct an opponent or to recover a loose ball, or assist the runner except by individually blocking opponents for him.
See, again, there's a lot of gray area in this. So when do you implement this rule? When do you not? Is this only a quarterback rule? Or is it a running back rule?
Who takes a snap?
No. It's not the person who takes a snap.
According to ESPN, though the initial language seemingly targeted the Bills and Eagles by specifically seeking to eliminate pushing immediately at the snap, the revised proposal is broader in an effort to entice more teams to vote for the ban
See?
The revised proposal would return the league to the rule it followed until
See,
2000.
now they're talking about
Okay.
outside of the quarterback too. So how do you how do you?
I would like
You
to
gonna
keep
blow
it-
the-
I
you
would
gonna
like
blow
to
the whistle
simplify
quick.
it. I would like to simplify it and keep it to the quarterback. That's me.
There's
But-
not going to be a chance of a guy breaking the tackle
But
in,
I think
in the scrum.
I think there seems to be a lot of momentum that they want this changed. That they don't want it when it looks like the quarterback's on a conveyor belt.
But if he's not down, if he hadn't hit the ground,
But he's not even applying the force, right?
he
He's
is.
being
But sometimes
aided.
he just gets pushed over the pile. Now sometimes he is able to move himself and just get pushed from behind. So again, that's my thing.
Right.
It's like
in a sense, you are penalizing the Eagles for being really good. at that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, come on, league. Like, Lions, stop damn whining.
But there are times where
Green
it's not
Bay,
the
stop
strength,
whining. Whoever this
it's
is,
it's not the strength of
Buffalo.
the quarterback. It's the strength of the lineman plus the aid of the person pushing.
Okay, so
the
how does the
quarterback.
quarterback?
I don't like that.
How does the quarterback get stopped when it's 4th and 1 and he's running quarterback? See, typically it's because they have more guys up on the line of scrimmage than I do. That's basically what it is. I only can have 5 guys at the point, but you can line up everybody within that box, close to the line, in gaps. That takes the now advantage you.
The tush push, according to ESPN, appeared in only 0.28% of total plays last year. The Eagles and Bills ran the play more often than any other teams.
Again, what was that? 2 point what?
0.28% of total plays. The
Right.
Eagles and Bills combined to run 163.
But these are big plays.
Yes.
These can be very big plays.
The two combined to run 163 tush pushes in the past 3 seasons, more than the rest of the NFL combined. Not only did the Eagles and Bills run the play most often, they were also the most successful. They scored a touchdown or achieved a first down on 87% of their tush push attempts. The rest of the league was successful on 71%.
Well, find a way to do it better. That's my thing. Find a way to do it better.
I think that is the major point of people who do not want this play to be banned is, well, either learn to stop it when the Eagles and Bills do it or learn to do it yourself.
Again, it's the NFL. It's as for as good as this league is and how as profitable and as popular as this league is, it's stuff like this that it's like, seriously, this because you couldn't stop the Eagles, and it's only
0.28% of total
It ain't
plays.
even a 1%.
Right, but that's not.
So let's
that
throw it
shouldn't be
out, man.
earth-shattering because this isn't a play that you run unless the situation is specific. I just don't think you should be able to push the quarterback. Do we disagree?
Let's ask
Yeah, I
Tony
disagree.
on
I
our
think they
phone
should
line.
push him.
You should be able to push the
Yeah.
quarterback. I just don't
He's a
like-
runner of the ball.
Let's ask Tony on our phone line, driven by Wilson County Hunter.com. Tony, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, fellas. Yeah, I know I'm a cynic. I'm a huge Titans fan, and I can be cynical, and I can't help but think that this is all politics. This is old rich white men trying to figure out how they can get a trophy into their market, and it doesn't pass the muster. Because look at Derrick Henry's game. In fact, I watched 2019 highlights last night, and I saw a clip where Ben Jones and Roger Saffold rushed up to Derrick Henry at the goal line because he couldn't get in, and they body slammed him into the end zone. Okay, but he didn't get the ball snapped to him. Okay, well, what about the Wild Horse package or the Wildcat package where they snapped the ball to him? It's conceivable that he or anybody else could find themselves in a situation where their teammates want to make sure he gets into the end zone. It doesn't. If I'm on any kind of committee reviewing this, I'm asking myself, how does this make the game better? How does it make it worse? How does it make our team more or less competitive? And I just wonder, if this was Kansas City, would we be having this conversation? Oh, I don't know. Hey, thanks. I appreciate you guys.
All right.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, here's another potential problem that I don't know if the league thought about this or not. Injury. And I'm not talking about the tush push. I'm just talking about the way they want to implement this new rule. Okay.
It has been brought up, even though
Mhm.
I don't think there has been any statistical data that shows that
They've
injuries
been talking
are higher
about
on this
the
play.
potential of injury.
Yeah, okay. So they said you can't engage in a scrum unless you are blocking that guy. Okay. I get it. So what happens when whoever at linebacker runs up on Pollard and they're stuck there. It's just like, as a receiver, what am I going to do or as a lineman? So what you're telling me now is I need to block him. I need to block that player that's engaged with Pollard.
Yeah.
I can hurt him now because they're engaged. Now I'm hitting him instead of just going up to Pollard and hitting him. Now I'm hitting the player, which the NFL doesn't want. That's why they got rid of the whole you can't jump on piles and and stuff like this, because it injures another player. Well, you're going to open it up again, because what guys tend to do in the old ways, like last year and the year before, is they would hit the runner. They would come up from the back of the runner and push the runner. Now what you're telling them is you can't do that. You got to be blocking. So okay, if I can't hit him, I'm hitting the tackler. So now I expose him to injury. So league, what do you want? You want to expose a guy with injury? Because now as an offensive guy, as a 300-pound lineman, I'm hitting that 190-pound defensive back. I'm not pushing my player. Or that 200-pound linebacker, I'm not pushing my player. So now I got to go directly at him. Then they're going to change the rule. Well, you can't go at the guy. So what do you want me to do? Just stand there? Because essentially that's what I got to stand there and wait for the ref to blow the whistle.
615-737-1025. We will continue to take your thoughts on the tush-push proposal from the Green Bay Packers. 615-737-1025. But coming up next, our friend Elliot Freeman. One thing I know about Elliot Freeman is sometimes he throws things out there, but because of how plugged in he is, I always know that there's a kernel of something there, right? And he said something on his podcast yesterday that relates to the Predators that I found to be incredibly interesting. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game. D. Mace Fingen and Donick 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. So I heard Robbie talk about this morning, and I agree. There are certain teams that when they lose, I really want to hear what people in that market are talking about. I specifically remember a couple of years ago when the University of Kentucky basketball team lost to Oakland in Michigan, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Not the Oakland A's.
Not the Oakland A's.
Or the Oakland Raiders back in the day.
Nope.
Lost to Oakland in what was John Calipari's final game as coach of the Kentucky Wildcats.
Should have been.
And
after
I
that.
turned on Kentucky Sports Radio with Matt Jones and listened to that all night long.
The carnage.
The carnage, the reaction. The Toronto Maple Leafs are another team that when things go wrong, I want to consume all of that content. I'll listen to all of the radio shows and the podcasts. And of course, one of the podcasts I listen to on a weekly basis, 32 Thoughts with our friend Elliot Freeman, who joins us every Thursday at 1 o'clock. And Elliot and his co-host Kyle Bukauskas were talking about the fallout from the Toronto Maple Leafs second round loss to the Florida Panthers. And Elliot and Kyle were talking about how the Maple Leafs could freshen up the mix, right? Maybe find a little more grittiness that they could insert into their lineup. And then Elliot Freeman.
And
yes,
the core four,
Yes.
there is a lot of speculation that now is going to be the time that they change the nucleus of the team, because they've had four players that have taken up a huge percentage of their cap for the last several years that all involve a lot of these heartbreaking seventh game losses. And every year there's this discussion. Should you break them up? Should you break them up? Now there are contracts expiring to Mitch Marner and John Tavares, so logic would tell you they're going to lose at least one, if not both of those guys, which will necessitate, they don't have a choice. They will change the formula. So they were talking about how you would have the opportunity to try to get a little more edge to your game. And so that's the backdrop of this comment you're about to play.
And then Elliot Freeman said this.
I want to say I'm throwing this purely at the wall, okay? I'm doing this with no knowledge. I don't even know that the player would want to do this.
Okay.
Jonathan Marchessault.
That's the sound of you throwing that name on the wall.
So, again, it's just me throwing stuff. I freely admit it's purely out of the top of my head. Tough year in Nashville. They need to make some changes. You know, he's 34 years old. 4 more years. Fierce competitor. I don't know. Depending how it all shakes out. That was another name that jumped into my head.
So that was Elliot Freeman on the 32 Thoughts podcast. And we'll ask Elliot more about this on Thursday. But as I was saying to Willie during the break, as Elliot said, I'm just throwing it out there. But Elliot is so connected that even when he's throwing something out there, there's that kernel of truth, perhaps, like informed speculation is what I call it. So again, he's just throwing it out there, but he wondered aloud if maybe the Maple Leafs would be interested in Jonathan Marchessault. And we talked a lot about Jonathan Marchessault at the end of the season because of the comments he made at the end of season news conference about Andrew Burnett. And Barry Trotz was asked about those comments when he held his end of season news conference. So, Willie, again, it's just Elliot Freeman wondering aloud. But one thing I know about Elliot Freeman is that he doesn't just throw things out there and hope that they stick.
Even though he'd said he was throwing this out there. And Kyle
Yes.
Bukauskas basically said it sounded like he was making a sound effect of the name hitting the wall and then falling to the ground, not sticking to the wall.
I was thinking of that scene from Moneyball, right? Where Brad Pitt is talking about we're going to get Scott Hatterberg, toss, and throws it onto the whiteboard. That's what
Yes.
I was thinking of at that moment.
So I really don't know if Elliott has been brainstorming with some people who actually would make these decisions for the Maple Leafs to know if there's interest, because when he made these comments, this was literally right after the Game 7 ended. So these were not the Maple Leafs themselves. I don't think have had time to really look at what's going to happen, how are we going to change the roster. They're in such the beginning stages. I think he's looking at a philosophical situation. So where is he getting that? Where would his mind go? I'm not thinking for Elliott. I'm just speculating, and we'll ask Elliott himself when he comes on Thursday. He's seen the comments, Marchessault questioning the coach, the adjustments, the sound bites we played a bunch of times. He also sees that Andrew Brunette is staying in Nashville. And he's saying, could you, if you're the Maple Leafs, if you lost Marner, which I think they're probably going to, and they lost Tavares, which I think they're probably going to. I don't know if maybe there's a scenario where Tavares takes a little less to stay. That's been speculated, but I don't know.
I have a hard time imagining Mitch Marner returning to Toronto.
I do too.
I could see Tavares, as you said, Willie, taking a major pay cut maybe to stay. But
because he's a little further along in his career, he may not want to move at this point. He's from that area. Maybe that happens. But either way, they're going to have more cap space to try to make maneuvers like this, and the cap is going up. So I see a fit there. Here's what I want to hear further if you want to take this to another level. A, what are you trading to the Predators? The Predators are not going to give away Jonathan Marchessault. As much as it didn't go well this year, nothing went well for the Predators, period. You go down the list of the players, it didn't go well for 95% of the roster. So they're not going to get rid of everybody. So we're singling out Marchessault for the reasons we pointed out, but they're not going to give him away. So the Maple Leafs, correct me if I'm wrong, do not have a first-round pick for the next 2 years, and they don't have they've been trading to try to load up for these playoff runs year in and year out. They don't have a lot of prospects that would have the Predators going, yeah, I like that. So
not only do they not have a first-round pick this year or next year, they apparently don't have one the following year.
Next 3 years?
In 2027.
Wow. So they also don't have a farm system that is stocked with a lot of players. I don't see it. Like, what are you trading to Nashville?
Okay, here's a question that either one of y'all can answer. It's from Nate on our text line. It says, why should the Preds trade Marchessault if they want to try to win now? Which is obvious what half the plan is. Based on Trott's comment, the team needs more grit, and Marchessault seems to be the grittiest. If he's truly a locker room problem, why haven't we heard this before? If Marchessault is moved, it sounds like the Preds have the Care Bears of a team. Care Bears of a team. So, yeah, if he's one of those guys that you just need in your locker room, and you would know better than anybody, Willie, it doesn't seem like he may rub people the wrong way based upon his honesty, but it doesn't seem like he's a locker room problem.
I've never gotten the sense that Jonathan Marchessault in his career is a dressing room issue. You know, Jared has sort of described him in the past as a chaos agent of sorts. You know, he is someone who speaks his mind. It's a little bit different than maybe what the Predators are used to. And that can be a good thing. It can be a good thing to have that person in the dressing room who's a little bit, what's the word we've used to describe him? Ornery.
Yeah, I don't think that's
rough.
the issue. I don't think that's the issue. I
Yes.
think if you want to boil it down to the issue, it would be more of, does he fit? Is he going to fit better with this group of players?
You're talking about from a schematic
from
standpoint.
a right shot, left shot, from the way they're going to play. He talked about the system, right? The adjustments defensively, the speed game, how much and this is what it's been put on to Andrew Brunette to shape the system a little bit more towards the personnel that you have. But what goes hand in hand too, like, remember, people were talking about three right-hand shots, right, of the Predators on the same Stamkos, Forsberg, Marchessault, all right-hand shots. Ideally, you might have a left shot in there, right? So that would be one thing. So if you're Barry Trotz, I don't think you're really in a position to say no to anything off the top. But you do have to say, well, what are you going to do for me? I'm not just going to give you a player. Like it's not at a crisis level
He's
to where
emphasized
you're just dumping the salary.
He's
That's
emphasized
not doing
hockey
it.
trades. He's emphasized hockey trades.
Exactly.
So
That's
this is
the term.
not a hockey trade. Is not we will give you Jonathan Marchessault and you give us a 2027 second round pick and this mid-level prospect. He is looking for trades where they can bring in a player who can help them today.
And I don't see a guy on the roster.
How about this?
For the Blue Jays?
Jonathan Marchessault.
Blue Jays for the Maple Leafs. I was
Or the Blue Jays.
Or the Blue Jays. They need Andrew Burnett's a Blue Jays fan. He grew up in Toronto, near Toronto. But is there a defenseman? I don't think that Toronto has that guy that they're sort of not happy with, that they'd be willing to part with to the Predators. I think that's what you would be looking for. I do think the Predators could use a really good defenseman, a Brandon Carlo or something like that. I just don't think the Maple Leafs would be interested.
Jonathan
in that kind of thing.
Marchessault for Calle Yarncroke, who says no.
I say no. I mean, I love Calle
I
Yarncroke.
know, it
How
was a
old is
joke.
Yarncroke now?
Oh, he's up there. He's been around a minute. Yarncroke is 33 years old.
It's young, man.
So he's about the same age as Marchessault, but he's never been he's never scored close to 40 goals. Like Calle Yarncroke is a great player, great role player.
Yes.
That's not a fair trade.
No, it's not. It was
Okay,
absolutely
but
a joke.
I'm thinking of guys, Brandon Carlo, for example, who they just traded for. You think they would do that? Probably not, right?
They gave up a first round pick for him, I think. That's why
They did. That was the latest guy they traded for. Ryan O'Reilly was the guy they traded a first round pick for. Right?
Here's another armchair GM from our favorite armchair GM, Jared Stillman. Jonathan Marchessault, for the rights to John Tavares, signed Tavares to a deal like Marchessault's. Trotz gets one of his guys at center and can play Stamkos on the wing. Now, I don't mean to correct you, Jared, but Barry Trotz never coached never coached John Tavares.
No,
because
Trotz
came in the year after Tavares left.
Exactly.
So Trotz did not coach John Tavares with the New York Islanders, but signed him to a contract like Marchessault. So Marchessault has 4 years left on his contract at a $5.5 million cap hit.
That's more in the ballpark, but again, what
you would have to give up a draft pick.
Toronto's going to get rid of him anyway.
Right.
He's going to be on the market anyway. Tavares, in theory, right?
In theory.
So why would I trade for Tavares when he's going to be a free agent? Now what you would have is exclusive marketing rate, but why would I trade Marchessault for that?
Yeah. I'm not sure.
If Tavares had one more year on his contract, then I think that would be something worth discussing, because Tavares is a center, right? And that is a big need for the Predators. I've always been interested. I'm surprised that Tavares. Now remember, Tavares the last few years has been making $11 million. 11. That was a huge cap hit at the stage of his career that he was at, and he was not quite the player he was in New York before he came there, but he's still a really good player. So if I could get him for $6 or $7 or $8 million, that would be different. So that would be very interesting to see what his market value is if he does hit the market.
Jared's point is that, if I'm reading his text correctly, is that Tavares' next contract may cost what Marchessault's contract is right now.
Yes, if you could swap the salaries and have a center as opposed to a winger, that makes some sense. But I don't know, like, Tavares has to agree to it as well, right? You'd have to get that on the front end before you did that,
right? Because
is Tavares agreeing to
that's a good point,
contract
actually.
that's 3 years at $5.5 million?
Because he has a full no movement clause. So theoretically, he could.
Even though his contract is going to expire July 1st,
right,
he would still have to, in theory, agree.
Yes.
To waive the no movement clause.
Exactly. So that's
wouldn't that be weird? You waive a no movement clause just to give a team negotiating rights that you could then turn down. You could then turn it down. I guess you could have it agreed upon on the front end if you wanted to do that. Look, being
one texter
being
says you can't
creative
have
and
two
making
number
hockey
91s.
trades.
Yes.
I wouldn't take anything off the board.
One texter says you can't have two number 91s because Tavares wears 91 and Steven Stamkos wears 91.
Yeah.
So someone would have
You have
to
to work
change.
with that. Yeah.
Yes, but if the Predators were really going to do this, it would need to be, as we said, a hockey trade. There would have to be someone on the Maple Leafs roster who could come to Nashville and help the Predators today. And I'm not exactly sure who that player is. Preferably it would be a center, but outside of Matthews and Tavares, the Maple Leafs don't really have much depth at center, right? They brought in Scott Lawton at the trade deadline. He did not pan out. They traded a first-round pick for Scott Lawton,
And
by the way.
and Lawton is really a third line center or a
Right.
great fourth line center. He's a gritty. He's a little bit more of a Colton Sissons level guy, even though he did give them a really nice lift. But let's not confuse him with a guy like Tavares or even a guy like Marchessault.
Would you take
Scott Lawton's contract was $1.5 million.
Would you take a player? I'm looking at the Maple Leafs roster right now.
Carlo is the guy to me that
Right.
I would start a conversation.
He has 2 more years left. He's a right-handed defenseman,
which is much needed on this team.
2 years left at
He's got size.
roughly $3.5 million per season.
That would be the type of guy that I think could help, that I would be willing to discuss.
Let me throw one more name at you.
Okay.
Max Domi.
Max Domi doesn't quite have the consistency.
3 more
to me.
years, $3.75 million cap hit. Can play center.
But is he really a center?
I think he's more of a winger. I think he's better as a winger, but he can play center. He has played center.
You would get younger, but off the top of my head, I don't know. I don't think I would do that. I would need
I don't
more.
think I would either.
Not straight up.
615-737.
I like the idea that we're talking about hockey trades. These
Yes.
are the fun things to discuss.
Yes. 615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Elliot Freeman floating the idea of Jonathan Marchessault.
We love floating.
We love
ideas.
floating the idea of Jonathan Marchessault being a match with the Toronto Maple Leafs. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, Brian Callahan with an update on L'Jarius Sneed. We will get back into that. Coming up next, 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063 The Game.
You talked about Snead rehab.
Yeah.
Are you talking knee? Are you talking quad? Are you talking both? And where is he in terms
Yeah,
of full participation?
I mean, it's both. I mean, the knee is something that you manage all the time. And then, for the quad injuries, it has taken some time to rehab from. So those things are still kind of ongoing, simultaneously. It's all part of the process for him. But he's in a great place. I'm excited about where he's at. He's progressing as expected.
That was Brian Callahan earlier today with an update on L'Jarius Sneed's health. We've talked about L'Jarius Sneed's legal situation, but we were wondering about his health situation. And that was the update from Brian Callahan, managing the knee all the time, but still working through the rehab process with the quad injury that knocked him out after 5 games.
I tell you this, I think that, again, I think Brian Callahan puts on a good face. I think he's inherently optimistic, but I think they are worried about Snead.
I would be.
From this standpoint. Just think about this. You brought a guy in that had knee issues, but not to a point where you thought it would cost him any games, because you figured, okay, I got the information from Kansas City. They were able to manage it. He didn't practice, but he didn't miss a game. He was out there. He played the most snaps, I think, of every defensive player on Kansas City at the time. It was close to it. So they're not worried if it's just that. But now all of a sudden, now you have this quad injury that turns out to be worse than anything than what you first thought. It just automatically affects the knee when it's not healthy anyway. So now they're not they're not only worried about the quad, but they're worried about the knee now, because now the knee is a problem because the quad is a problem. Y'all
But the
see what
knee
I'm
has
saying?
been a problem
But
from
the knee-
day
they
one
would-
that they had to
but
be
they-
on board
yeah.
with when they traded.
But they were okay with managing just the knee. They were good with managing just the knee. Now you got a quad injury. However the quad injury happened, you got a deep quad injury that just inherently now affects the knee. Now I'm really worried. But I may not show it. But yeah, I'm going to say his rehab is going as planned. He's still rehabbing, and he's even, still working on the knee, because that was a problem coming into it. Wasn't a major problem, but it was a problem. But not only are we still rehabbing and making sure that this thing doesn't get worse with the knee, with the quad, we got to make sure the knee is right.
But as press conferences go, when you ask that question, you don't really care if the coach says this detail or that detail or the bone marrow transplant or all of that. What you're looking for the coach to tell you is, are they confident that on day one of training camp, he'll be ready to go? And they stopped way short of saying that. So that will tell you that the rehab process, long time. He had this procedure done when?
It would have been late last year.
It would be November?
Like maybe it sounds like maybe late November, early
Yeah.
December. It was early January. He talked to reporters and said he had the surgery 6 weeks prior. So let's say Thanksgiving.
It shows you how complicated this injury turned out to be. It's so easy to say, well, he took a helmet to the thigh. I have taken knees to the thigh in basketball. it can be a lot more serious than you think. But this is another level where you needed bone marrow, you needed a complex, unique process, and it's a long, long recovery here. So I was looking to see, are we going to get a timetable? Yeah, we're I had no idea what he was going to say. He easily could have said, yeah, I think he'll be ready to go. We're expecting him to
They
be
don't expect him to be ready.
So when they don't say it and they stop short of it, that makes me believe that you're right. It's much more likely that he is not, or they'd be pleasantly surprised if he is.
It's
ready.
like having.
So we're lowering the bar. We're lowering our expectations to what we think we're going to see from him.
One texter says, can the league hurry up and suspend him over the shooting charges so we can escape this awful contract? That would be nice.
I mean, I if it didn't happen the way that, if there's other factors into it, let it play out. I don't want them to rush anything. Let it play out. And if he did do wrong, then suspend him. Then you're done with the contract. But it's like having a high ankle sprain, and you know that, okay, I got to manage this throughout for the next 8 weeks, because it takes a while for those high ankle sprains to heal. I've had one. So it's like, okay, I'm managing this high ankle sprain. Then all of a sudden, now you have a knee issue. Now it compounds it. Now, not only are you rehab, and it was like, okay, he'll be back in 6 weeks because of the ankle, but now you got to add on more weeks because of the knee. Now you're rehabbing. They were able to manage the knee, but the quad, and now the quad affects the knee. Now they're probably worried, like, man, this guy may not be ready, not only because of the quad, but because of the knee now.
One texter says, what about Mike Borgonzi? He came from Kansas City. He had to know, don't you think?
Well, I think he probably has a very good understanding of the knee and why it's a constant management. I don't know all of the details. They have been pretty upfront with that for the most part. We don't know everything, but we know that they had a very specific plan. Borgonzi knows it because he probably was a part of the process when they came up with it, of the managing where he doesn't practice. But now you have the quad injury. So I think Borgonzi certainly came in with the knowledge of what's going on with the knees. And we asked him about it when we had Borgonzi on. And he said, hey, I know all about the knees. I think he's a really good player. I'm excited to have him back on my team or whatever. He said all the right things there.
Right. In Kansas City, his final season in Kansas City, when he was dealing with this knee injury and not practicing, he started 16 games. He played 98.3% of the defensive snaps. He did not give up a touchdown in coverage in the regular season. So that's why when he came here, I said, well, he was pretty darn good despite this management plan on his knee.
The practice. Nobody cares if you don't practice if you produce like that.
Yes. Right. But then last year in the games he did play, he was not, the opposing passer rating against L'Jarius Sneed in 2023, 55.5%. Last season, in 5 games, 75.3.
So it's important to note, too, didn't he miss a game or two with something else? Was it a hamstring or something?
With Kansas City or
no, with
Tennessee?
With the Titans last year. I feel like before the injury that ended his season happened, he had a hamstring situation he was trying to play through. Did he miss another game in there?
I thought it was the quad injury. I didn't know about it.
He played he played, let's see. He played against Chicago, the Jets, the Packers, the Dolphins, and the Colts. And that would that have been their first 5 games, right?
And then he didn't play anymore.
And then he didn't play the rest of the season.
Yeah, so
okay, so maybe I seem to remember he was on the injury list. He may have played through it and had something else, a hamstring or something. I could be wrong. But let's just say in a nutshell, in the 5 games he played, he wasn't nearly as effective.
Close, no. And then listen, I think we have to we got to understand this too. If you understand anything about, the defensive side of the ball, Kansas City, I would tend to believe it may be slightly easier to play defensive back when you have
Chris
Jones and those guys getting to the quarterback, and the guy has to release the ball a lot quicker than what. And listen, Spagnolia is a hell of a defense coordinator, one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL. But when you have Jones on that side of the ball, I mean, it makes your job a tad bit easier. And then you bring him here to the Titans, and they have no one that produces like Jones. And that's not a knock on Jeffrey Simmons or anybody. That's basically fact. Nobody is producing on that D line like Jones, which then, asks the question, sort of like a chicken and egg, which one came first? Is he good because of the defensive rush, or is he good just because he's good? Well, it showed this year in his 5 games, it may have been a little bit of the defensive rush getting to the quarterback that probably didn't allow him to have to cover as long, So we will see this year if he's healthy, because he needs to play to a level. And I think he may be the one guy on this team, and we'll probably talk about this some other day. The most pressure is on him, I think.
Outside of Cam Ward.
Outside of Cam Ward, there's always going to be pressure on the quarterback.
Yes.
But outside of him, I think the pressure is on L'Jarius Sneed.
I'm just thinking
to play
of
and step
the
up,
state of the position.
to be healthy.
I'm thinking of the state of the cornerback position if Sneed is unavailable. You've got Roger McCreary, you've got Jarvis Brownlee Jr., Daryl Baker Jr., Gabe Judy Lawley. Like it's a significant weakness.
No question. No question about it. And if you could magically say you're going to get a good year from him, that would go a long way to having a more of a defense that you feel like you can hang your hat on.
But I think
it's one less.
I think
piece.
what helps him is if Denard Wilson can generate more sacks, not snacks, more sacks.
Snacks are good too.
Snacks are good too. But if he can find a way to generate more sacks, if those guys can get to the passer a lot quicker, then it does make those guys' job outside a little bit easier.
Yeah, and they don't have Harold Landry this year.
Exactly. So.
2 quick texts on the matter that are basically the same thing. Skylar says, Sneed got the contract. He's not trying to play for this awful team, LOL. One texter says, it's kind of weird. Once he got his contract, he's unable to play on the knees, but before he could.
Listen, I'm not going to say he's dogging it or taking the money and just forget y'all Titans. I'm not going to sit here and say he's that type of player. So I don't think, his injury status, makes me think, oh, he doesn't want to play. And believe me, I've seen guys that get contracts and it just seems like they just take their foot off the gas pedal. I've seen it. But I don't think L'Jarius Sneed is that type of guy. I just think he was injured. I don't think they handled the situation right, but I don't think he's dogging it. He wants to come back fully healthy, and I don't blame him, because when you're dealing with your knees and your quads, man, that's your bread and butter, your movement in and out of breaks, stuff like that. So I'm not coming back until I'm 100% healthy.
I agree with what you said earlier, Derek, that the Titans, their updates on this have been a bit hazy, to use one term. Not a lot of clarity about L'Jarius Sneed's status with these injuries. And I understand that you don't want to share everything. In the NFL, you have to share some things, but you don't want to share everything. But the way that the Titans have gone about explaining the situation has created more questions than answers, which does not help Sneed.
I think his knee's bothering him because of the quad, but that's not what the Titans really want to say. They want to lead with the quad and try to, he's still managing the knee, because they don't want that, because it'll be egg on your face. I think got this guy with knee problems, and now he's having even more knee problems to go along with the quad problem.
Without getting into all the details or worrying about all the details of what specifically is happening, I think the bottom line is this: in the big picture, as you're projecting out the next really good Titans roster, which is 2 or 3 years away, in my opinion, and I think the year that the stadium opens is a good target to try to hit if you're Mike Borgonzi. And I might even try to sell that to Amy Adams Strunk. Hey, when that stadium opens, our goal is to have a roster that can win, and it's going to take some time. That may mean that we're not going to be that great this year, but I think on that list, I don't think when that stadium opens, he's got on his penciled in cornerback list L'Jarius Sneed. I just don't think, and I think when they made the trade, they did think.
Oh, of course.
Or they hoped anyway. Otherwise, you wouldn't make the trade and spend that much money.
Because he's what,
on a corner?
27,
Because he's not that old, but his wear and tear is
28.
catching up. 28. So when he was traded, he was about to turn 27. You're thinking, okay, yeah, well, a 30-year-old cornerback,
he still should be good.
He still should be good, or at least another year or two of that, like hopefully. And in the meantime, he should help you a lot. Now, I think you're targeting who's after him when he's gone. Who's the next guy we got to get in there? Put it on the list.
615-737-1025. We will take your thoughts on L'Jarius Sneed. Coming up next, we hope that Jared Stillman doesn't take up our entire final segment, doing a victory lap on L'Jarius Sneed. But we've got something for Jared. Willie has something for Jared, and we will get to that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk F&M Bank, banking made easy on purpose. You can check their website out, myfmbank.com. Remember, the Smart Swipe debit card is a great way to make banking easy on purpose. You're looking for a simple way to save some money? Well, the Smart Swipe debit card does that. You just make your regular everyday purchases with that debit card, and it's going to round up to the nearest dollar. So every time you use it, you're going to be saving money. It's like putting the change in the penny jar, in the piggy bank, if you will. And your piggy bank's going to get bigger and bigger over time, and you're going to be saving money very simply without even thinking about it. That's just one of many examples of banking made easy on purpose. Find the nearest location to you and learn more about it and other ways that they can make your financial life easier. myfmbank.com. 20 locations in our listening area. There's in your backyard. We'll take it to the bank Friday at 1:45. It's F&M Bank. Banking made easier on purpose. Member FDIC.
D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Stillman and Company coming up next, and joining us right now as we transition to Stillman and Company is Jared Stillman, who I'm sure isn't going to take a 4-hour victory lap about L'Jarius Sneed today. Am I right?
Well, David, do you have the grid in front of you or no?
I do not.
See, I feel like Ian brought the grid in earlier than Reed probably brings the grid in nowadays. But there's one segment on today's program scheduled for L'Jarius Sneed talk. I do want you guys to think about this, though, for a second. Because L'Jarius Sneed took the infamous helmet to the quad in the Colts game, which I guess ended his season. We later found out was a quad bruise and a quad strain, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, on October 13th. Lindsay and I had our baby shower on October 19th. Our son eats real food now. So he still hurt from the helmet to the quad, and our son went from in the belly and not even baby showered to now eating real food, and L'Jarius Sneed is still not better. Do you guys really think it was a helmet to the quad?
Well, you had to have a bone marrow transplant.
Yes, it was something to the quad.
So is it like leukemia? Because isn't that what a bone marrow transplant is?
I'm not a doctor,
not
and
a
neither
doctor.
are you. But there was bone marrow transplant involved. I would think that lengthens
helped.
out. That lengthens out the time it takes to recover. It is taking a very
Bone
long
marrow
time.
for a quad?
Hey, listen.
Are you saying that the reporting of Nick Suss is incorrect?
I do believe that the reporting is incomplete. I believe
Incomplete. Okay, with
not incorrect,
what
but
I
incomplete?
so what I believe Sneed had is what's called the Oates surgery, OATS, which is where you take basically different types of cartilage to try to replace bad knee cartilage, not quad cartilage, knee cartilage.
Does that
include
mean
a bone marrow transplant?
Yeah,
It was
bone
a
marrow?
bone marrow injection, to
Yeah.
be clear, not a transplant,
Okay.
a bone marrow
So
injection.
they haven't said anything else about any more injuries. How do you come up with these injuries or these surgeries that they
How do I
didn't
think
even
it's
talk
the
about?
Oates surgery?
Yeah, how do you think it's the Oates surgery?
Because I talked to somebody that works on
But
NFL
they're
players.
telling you what it is. They said he had
right.
a
They
bone
lied
marrow.
the first time. They lied the second time. They're lying the third time.
So you're
see what I'm
saying that he didn't have, so you know for sure he didn't have a bone marrow
Injection.
procedure.
And not to
I know
discredit,
this.
not
From
to discredit.
what I was told.
Uh-huh.
I was told that if he were to have had that injection, which he probably did and had the Oates surgery, he would have had no need for the knee brace. What I was told from a guy that is a doctor who works on NFL players, including some currently on the Titans. When I broke down the reporting of what was wrong with L'Jarius Sneed, I said, does this pass the mustard? He said no, because the media was reporting that Sneed was in a knee brace.
So did you go
And he
ask
said, "You don't
another
need a
doctor?
brace."
Did you go ask another
Not to
doctor?
discredit, not to
I
dis-
have to get a second opinion.
not
Yes,
to
you
discredit.
would. A player
Hold on,
would get a second
hold on.
opinion.
Not to discredit.
I'm not
your-
discrediting the doctor,
not
but
to
I'm just
discredit
saying.
the physician you spoke to, but I liken it almost to those Twitter doctors that we see where a player gets injured and they take the clip and go, looks like a torn ACL. He'll be out 6 to 8 weeks. Like
if
The doctor didn't do the diagnosis.
If L'Jarius Sneed completely tore the quad off the bone on October 13th, shouldn't he be healthy by now?
I'm not a doctor.
Yes.
Obviously.
Okay,
but
Jared,
you're
Jared.
basically what you're saying is he's faking an injury. Is what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is that his injury is the knee injury, and the Titans are continuing to lie about it. And they even dropped their lie today because they said it's the quad and the knee. Last year, they said it was nothing to do with the knee.
Jared, so if he already, and I'm not trying to litigate this either way. I'm just saying, if he already had a knee issue, we all know that. Manageable, whatever.
He
had
told
a knee.
you his knees were fine. He said Titan fans
Jared,
do not worry
Hey, Jared.
about my knees.
Hey, Jared.
They're all good.
Hey, Jared. Calm down. If
Titans
indeed he had a knee injury coming in, however severe the knee was, when he has a quad injury, a deep quad injury that requires some type of procedure, don't you think then that it would inherently affect the knee and they would want to stabilize it all? I don't know if he had the injury, the Oates surgery or not. I'm just going by what they are telling us. I'm not saying it's true or false, but I'm going by what's telling us. And you're telling me, well, no, it's this. Did that physician do the diagnosis? He's only going by what you are telling him. right?
Here's what I worry.
Right or
about.
wrong?
I'm telling him.
No,
what's
right
being
or wrong.
reported, which you're saying is,
Exactly,
you
but
said
he
Nick
didn't do
Cousins
the
wrong?
diagnosis. Every doctor, until you do the diagnosis, they will tell you, yeah, but I can't really tell you if it definitively was that because they didn't do the diagnosis, right?
Yeah, but they have
Okay,
a pretty
then.
good idea.
But
Again,
every
he would
doctor
say that
worth
if
their
it
salt and
was-
say, hey,
Derek,
listen, man,
he
I don't
said-
know what I could tell you from my experience what it could have been, but I wasn't in there doing the diagnosis of him.
He said if it was a bone marrow, whatever you want to call it, if it was that bone marrow injection, then he wouldn't need a brace. So he was in a brace. I was told. I sent a screenshot of what TD put out there about the bone marrow injection. So TD put out, good afternoon, Titans corner L'Jarius Sneed was in the locker room for the first time in 7 weeks. Sneed said he had a procedure, a bone marrow injection on his leg. He injured the quad in week 5 and hasn't played since. Sneed said the procedure was 6 weeks ago. He's walking with a brace on his left leg. And so I sent that screenshot to the doctor, who replied he wouldn't need a brace for 6 weeks from an injection.
But did the doctor do the diagnosis? Was
Of
he in the
course he
office?
didn't
Okay,
do it.
then. Well, he's
It's
just giving you an
illegal for the doctor
opinion.
to say
He's
that.
giving you an opinion.
A much more educated opinion
But you
than
did.
yours.
But my thing was, did you go ask another doctor? Did you ask the doctor that actually did the procedure?
You can't talk to those doctors.
Well, go to somebody close. You went to
can't
somebody.
interview the
You went
doctor
to. I
who
know that,
did
but you went
L'Jarius
to.
Sneed's
You
injury.
went to
That is
someone
illegal.
that I know, but you went to someone that you know. Go to some. All I'm saying, Jared. Go to somebody else. You stop. You a one-stop shop. You stopped at that
Somebody
guy
texted
and
the
got your
text line.
information and said, "I'm running with." And there's
I had
nothing. There's
somebody
nothing
texting
wrong
the
with
text
it.
line when I played the cuts of you guys being like, they said it's the quad, so it must be the quad.
Yes.
Who is a doctor, sent me his website, and he said anybody who's like an orthopedic knows that the knee's connected.
Again, did he do the diagnosis? Your
Again,
doctor. I'm
I
not saying
can't
he's
talk
right
to
or
that
wrong.
guy.
We're going to talk in circles here.
I can't talk to that guy, Derek.
We're going to
I'm
talk.
not- I'm not
can't
talk-
talk to
I'm
that
not ta-
guy.
I'm not
Nobody
telling you to-
can talk
no,
to that
Jared.
Hold
guy.
on.
It's
We're going to
illegal.
talk in
Jared,
circles.
hold
We're
on,
going to
hold on.
talk in
Hold on,
circles here.
Jared. I'm not saying. I know there's laws. I know you cannot talk to the actual doctor that did it, but you went to one doctor whom you know, and you told him this is what the deal is. Okay, you did that. But then did you go to another doctor and say, let me make sure. Let me get another opinion. Not from the doctor that did surgery, but from another. That's all I'm saying, Jared.
Quickly, Jared, because Willie does have something that he wants to share with you before we go.
I just wondered if I just happened to see a tweet this morning that was pretty interesting based on a discussion we had before, that the Pro Football Focus has released its highest graded players at every position from the 2024 draft. The number one interior defensive lineman is T'Vondre Sweat, 76.2 PFF overall grade. More pass rushing juice than expected.
I did see that.
Registering 24 pressures.
And you subscribe to Pro Football Focus,
Yes.
and you use Pro Football Focus stats on the air when they suit your narratives.
So I'm
And so all we argued
because
oh my
I don't
okay,
remember
so you
the
don't. So
pressure.
now Pro
This
Football
sounds to
Focus
me
isn't good.
Like this sounds to me like your analytics that say Tajay Spears is better than Derrick Henry because I didn't see the pressure from T'Vondre Sweat last year. I didn't see the pressure from anyone on the Titans defensive line last year, including T'Vondre Sweat.
Well, he has
Okay.
24 of them.
And also,
Had.
3.7% missed tackle rate, ranked 9th lowest out of 142 defensive tackles. I think that would grade out at least as a double, which is what our
Yes.
argument was
Yeah.
of
A
grading his
stand-up
rookie.
double.
I didn't argue for a home run.
How
I
many
argued
sacks
for a
did he have?
double. And you
How many
argued that he
sacks?
was no more than a single. I rest my
How many
case.
sacks?
I rest my
2
case.
sacks?
I'm with
You
Willie.
don't draft an interior defensive lineman to get sacks. Do we need
Right,
to go
and
over?
You don't draft it. You don't draft it.
Do we
interior
need-
defensive lineman 38
Do
like
we
you
need to
don't
go
draft
over
it.
Odie
Willie,
Naga
no, no.
and all those guys again that we
Jared.
showed you?
Hey, Jared. Is
Last
he,
word,
no,
Derek.
is
Last
he,
word.
Is he a good player?
Solid.
That's enough.
Is he a double?
That's enough. He's a good player.
All right,
He's a good
all
player.
right.
Solid.
All
He's a
right.
good player.
That'll-
And what did you
So
say,
is Ken
Jared?
Reckler. Used the
You
38
can't have
chip on
enough
him.
good players.
He's a double.
Okay.
That is true.
All right.
He's
All
not
right.
Derrick Henry though.
Okay. That'll do it for
Love
us
you,
today. Jared, you've got 4 hours
Yes.
to fill. We'll let you do that. Stone and Company coming
Adam,
up next. Yes.
Willie, Dr. Derrick, see you guys.
Oh, man. Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Tuesday. And Jared, peace.